Last week we discussed the idea that sometimes people feel fake. You feel like it's not me. I'm not the guy who has kavana. I'm not the guy who doesn't talk. I'm not the guy who learns the whole day. Whatever it is, it just isn't me. I'm just a regular guy. So therefore, when you do something which is outside of your normal routine, and this really goes by whatever routine you have. So if you're someone who learns for 1 hour, then it's not me to learn for 2 hours. If you're someone who learns for a half hour, it's not me to learn for an hour. If you don't learn at all, then it's not me to learn for 10 minutes. Whatever the area is. But whatever it is, as soon as you start to reach outside of your normal routine, you start to feel like, hey, it just isn't me, and you start to feel fake. And we discussed that there's different ways to try to overcome this. And the first way is to integrate as much as possible into your mind something which is different than our way of thinking. I think most people think kind of an all or nothing thought process. So either I'm a guy who learns or I'm a guy who doesn't. Either I'm a guy who talks during davening or I'm a guy who doesn't talk during davening. And obviously the truth is that there's no such thing as a guy who talks during davening or a guy who doesn't talk during davening. Every time you talk during davening is an individual act which is not connected to the one from the day before, the one from 10 minutes before. Every time you speak Lashon Hara is an individual act of Lashon Hara. And if someone eats treif, there's no such thing as two categories of people. There's a guy who keeps kosher and a guy who doesn't keep kosher. There's no such thing as those two categories. There's a halacha that you have to eat kosher. And you have to eat kosher all the time. And every individual time that you eat treif, or every individual time that you pass up treif, is an individual mitzvah and an individual avera, not connected to the one before. So imagine a person who eats treif for the whole year, comes Elul, and he wants to do Teshuvah. It's very difficult for him to start keeping kosher. I never keep kosher. It starts to feel fake. So the idea is that we have to start to realize it's not fake. Just because you kept treif last time has nothing to do with today's action. This is a brand new action, and if you do this action, you're doing a brand new avera, nothing connected to the one before. And so important to try to internalize this into our minds, that each action is completely and totally independent of the one before. Every time I learn is independent of whether I learned the day before or not. Every action that we do is completely independent of every other action and is judged by itself. There's no categories of people that you fit into. Now, that was the first point. The second point we discussed was the idea that sometimes it's good to fake. And the reason why it's good to fake is because there's a rule, it's also in the vernacular, it's called just do it. And the idea is that when you just do something, you actually become that. So if a person wants to go on a diet, or if a person wants to start getting up early in the morning, or if a person wants to start going to sleep on time, very often he doesn't feel like it. Very often he doesn't want to do it. It just doesn't feel right. But if you just do it for a few days, and you just stick with it, even though your every part of your fiber of your being is fighting against that change, but if you stick with it for a few days, all of a sudden it starts to become normal.
So if you learn, because it's Teshuvah time, is that called the Shema or the Shema?
It's not part of this discussion. Let's discuss that later. But the idea is like this: if you wake up in Ella and you say, "I never learned. I didn't learn a whole year," so you decide, "I'm going to start going to shir. I'm going to start learning a half hour every day," and it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel like me. It doesn't feel right. You're not even interested. You're not in the mood. You don't even want to do it. If you just do it, and you stick to it, and you do it every day, before long, it's going to change. And this idea we find in the Sefer HaChinuch. We've discussed this in the past, but it's such an important Sefer HaChinuch that go through it again. The Sefer HaChinuch is talking about a mitzvah, and one of the first mitzvahs in the Torah, the 16th mitzvah in the Torah, Shaloi lishbar etzem min ha-Pesach. You're not supposed to break a bone from the Korban Pesach. So one of the mitzvahs in the Torah, etzem l'sishbru bo. And he says, why do we have this mitzvah? He says the mitzvah is to remember the nisim of Mitzrayim. When you're eating the Korban Pesach, you shouldn't break a bone. To remember the nisim of Mitzrayim, Why? Because we are supposed to look at ourselves as kings. We left Mitzrayim, we became free men, we became kings, we became the elite. And the elite people, they don't break bones like dogs. It's low level to break bones. It's not nice to do that. Poor people who are hungry, so they have to scrape out any kind of food that they can find, so they break the bones. But a richer person, he doesn't need to break the bones. And therefore, when we want to become the elite, the Skulas Kol Amim, the greatest nation, Mamlechas Kohen Vam Kadosh, every year at this time, when it's our time when we become that nation, we're supposed to act as if we're the elite. And by doing that, and by acting like that, it puts it into ourselves, we start to feel elite. And then he says, and don't ask my son, he just finished a lot of mitzvahs here. So you're not allowed to eat, you have to eat matzah, and you have to get rid of chametz, and you can't eat the Korban Pesach cooked or raw, and you can't leave over from the Korban Pesach, and a guy can't eat the Korban Pesach, and you're not allowed to take the Korban Pesach outside, and it has to be limnu, it has to be a chabur, and it's so many mitzvahs about the Korban Pesach, about Yetzias Mitzrayim, about chametz, about matzah, and what's the reason for all of them? To remember Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we say every day, Zeich Yetzias Mitzrayim, Zeich Yetzias Mitzrayim. Enough already. How many times do you have to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim? How hard is it to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim? Just do one mitzvah once a year, remember Yetzias Mitzrayim. What's the big deal? Don't ask. Why don't do so many mitzvahs to remember this nace? With one zikaron we can put in our minds, and it won't be forgotten. That would be the question. Don't ask that question. This is not from a smart question. This is a foolish thought. Gets you to ask this question. And now my son and Bina, if you want to understand Shema Zois, listen to this. Tilt your ear and hear. This is how important it is. Listen to this. Think about it. Tilt your ear and hear. I'll teach you how to do good in Torah mitzvahs. Here's this trick. You want to know how to do good in Torah mitzvahs? Here's the trick. You should know. A person is worked on based on his actions. The liba and his heart, and all his thoughts, tamid achar maisav, always go after the actions. What he does, whether they're good or bad. Even someone who's a complete Rasha in his heart, and everything that he thinks about is bad. All he thinks about is bad thoughts the whole day. If we wake up his spirit, and he'll put his work, to do Torah mitzvahs, even not Lishma. Yes. Where is he? Yeah.
Stepped up.
Should we get him? Get him. No, he's going to miss it. Forget him. Even. Hello, you're missing it.
Oh my God.
What was your question?
The principal's
That was not part of the discussion.
Yeah, it now became part of the discussion. In Ya'ara Rucha, you ready? If he wakes up his Ruach, and he puts his heart and his work, even not L'Shem Shemayim, but if he does it anyways, he just does it. But he comes every day and he learns and he davens and he eats kosher and he doesn't say Lashon Hara and he does everything he's supposed to do. Miyad yenata latov. Immediately he'll turn good. His actions control your mind and your heart. Through your actions you can destroy the Yetzer Hara. Ki achrei ha'pu'ulos nimshachim halvavis. The heart goes after the actions. And even the opposite, if a person's a complete tzaddik, and his heart is completely perfect. He loves Torah mitzvahs. If he does bad things, maybe the Melech forces him to do everyday bad things. If he actually does that a whole day, he'll turn into complete Russia. Can you imagine? The biggest tzaddik, the biggest Talmud Chacham, if you force him to do bad things the whole day, even though in his heart he's thinking, I love Hashem, and in his heart he's trying to be good, eventually he's going to turn bad. Ki yadua hadavar is known, ve'emes shekol adam nifal k'vi pulosav. Every person is acted on based on his actions. Like we know.
So Rabbi, I just want to say, there's two separate ideas on this issue of worrying about hypocrisy. One is...
I wanted to point out something, quickly. This is worrying about being fake. We're going to talk about... No, I'm going to try to show a little distinction. Two separate things.
Okay, but just so I understand. The first is, don't worry about it. Do the mitzvah, celebrate that mitzvah. If you did it just once, you did it once. But
there's nothing fake about it. Each time is independent.
But a slightly separate idea is, if you do it once, you might do it twice and three times. Before you know it, it could influence your thoughts and make you a better person.
Right, exactly.
But two separate
ideas.
approaches.
Yes. Two separate ideas. Now this idea is a very powerful idea because you'll find many times that someone's maybe in a bad mood, he's not interested, and psychological things, emotional things are very hard sometimes to overcome, and maybe a person will go to a therapist or who knows what he needs to do in order to sort of change his mood. But here we have an idea which is very powerful, because changing a person's mood and changing a person's feelings and thoughts is very difficult. But actions are in our control, are much more in our control. And the message that this is telling us is, it's very easy to change your thoughts and your feelings. You just have to do something which is a little bit difficult, which is do it anyways. I don't feel like learning. I sit down in front of a sefer, I just don't feel like it. So very often what a person will say is, okay, first I have to work on the feeling. I don't want to feel fake. I don't want to learn if I'm not interested in learning. I don't want to learn if this doesn't talk to me. This is boring. It doesn't even talk to me. Let's say a person feels that way. So what they start to think is, I need to work on that. Maybe I'll go to a shir to try to motivate me. Maybe I'll try to motivate myself. Maybe this just isn't for me. But the truth is, there is only one way really to overcome that. Just learn. Even though it feels fake, even though you're not interested, even though you're bored, just do it. Do it for a few days. It's not only talking about learning. Any mitzvah that is, whether it's getting up for davening, whether it's eating kosher, whether it's whatever it is, it just doesn't feel right. I'm just not interested. I don't know what I'm doing. Someone told me once that he doesn't like to put on tefillin because he doesn't understand it. It feels weird. He's putting on these boxes. First he has to learn about tefillin. First he has to this is what he told me. First he has to learn about tefillin. He has to understand tefillin before he could put on tefillin. Before he could put on tefillin, he needs to feel putting on tefillin. What the Sefer Chinuch is telling you is, it's the opposite. You want to try to feel putting on tefillin, you can spend your whole life trying to feel it. You can spend your whole life trying to be motivated to do it. But if you want a quick, rapid approach, is just put on the tefillin. Just come and learn. Just daven. Just do it for a few days. And when you do it, your liboy, your machshavosav will go after your actions. So your actions are much more in your control. And this is actually nowadays very much, and if you read the self-help kinds of books, the books give different approaches of how to fix your own feelings and emotions. This is what they say. They say, just do it. If you do it, if you just smile, and it's a clause called act as if. Act as if you're happy and you'll become happy. Act as if you love to learn and you'll start to love to learn. So the idea is, very often, instead of getting too involved in the emotions and the feelings, just do it. And the emphasis, if you want to take it a step further, this is really one of the key differences between Judaism and all the other religions. I used to be the mashgiach in Princeton University, for those who haven't heard that before. Food. Princeton University is, everyone heard of Princeton, right? Princeton is one of the top schools in North America, like Harvard and Ivy League, and usually rated number 1 or 2 or tied with Harvard. And Princeton's 40 minutes from Lakewood. It's in New Jersey and it's 40 minutes from Lakewood. So when I was learning in Lakewood, I used to go Friday mornings till Shabbos and whatever. I used to be the mashgiach there. There was a nice frum community there, like a bunch of students, and there was a rabbi, one of the shluchim from Israel, a good friend of mine, Rabbi Cohen, became good friends. I used to go every Shabbos. And So one time I was there, it was actually a Sunday morning, I think it was Ben Azmanim, and I stayed, and there was a dinner. And we had to clean like an enormous amount of lettuce, like this crazy amount of lettuce, and the guy was supposed to do it the day before. He didn't do it. He just left it for me, and look, I couldn't do it. It was too much. And usually it wasn't that bad, but this one time it was very difficult. So the manager over there was getting very upset at me. So he's like, "We have to have lettuce for the dinner. Like, how could there not be lettuce for dinner?" I said, "Look, what are you going to do? We don't have enough lettuce, so you'll serve a little less lettuce, whatever. Serve something else. There's plenty of food, right?" So he says to me, "You know what the problem is? You guys, you don't care about people. You don't care about people. You just care about, who cares of lettuce? You care about all these little details. What's all these details for? You got to look at the big picture. You got to look at it. We're trying to serve lettuce to people. We're trying to make people happy. Serve lettuce."
You were a non-Jew.
No, I was a non-Jew. So he started telling me the difference between Christianity and Judaism. And he actually said some very lofty ideas, but the basic idea that he was trying to say, which is the fundamental core difference, is by other religions, some other religions at least, the bottom line that matters is the feelings, is the thoughts. And the actions are not so important. The actions are the form that the thoughts take. And Judaism is the exact opposite. When we actually spoke last Hanukkah, we discussed a little bit Judaism from Shamshon Fall Hirsch. And he says this is the exact difference between Judaism and other religions. Other religions is, first you have the thoughts, first you have the feelings, and then you find a form to express those thoughts and those feelings. By Judaism, it's the opposite. By Judaism, you have a form and you have actions, and the key is the actions. If a person thinks, "I hate Hashem," or whatever, Hashem didn't create the world, he doesn't get killed. If he even says Hashem didn't create the world, he doesn't get killed. But if he's Mechalel Shabbos, where through his actions he's showing that Hashem didn't create the world, then he's Chayav Skila. The form is what matters in Judaism, even more than that. Now, the truth is that the feelings and the thoughts are also maybe even the fundamental, but the question is, how do you get there? By the other religions, you start with the feelings and thoughts, which lead you to the action. By Judaism, we understand it's the opposite. First you do the actions, and those actions lead you to the feelings and thoughts. So therefore, if it comes a time where a person says, "I feel fake, I feel like this isn't real, I feel like this just isn't me," that's how to make it you. That's how to become it. The best way to become it is to do it. Just do it and you will become it. So whatever it is, whether it's a way of dress, whether it's a davening, whether it's anything that you want, if you just do it for a little while, it will become you. And in the beginning, you may feel uncomfortable, it may not feel like you, it may feel weird, it may feel strange, and it may feel fake. But that's how to become real. By faking it for a little while, it will become real. So even though maybe it's hard a little bit to overcome that feeling of fakeness, but the idea is that's the challenge, and the challenge is to go and overcome it and just do it. And by just doing it over and over a few times, it will start to become more and more normal and more normal, and one day it won't be fake. It will become you. And this is really a key lesson for anything in life. Anything that we want to do, any job we want to do, anytime we want to stretch outside of our box, is to just do it. Just reach past what you're used to and do it, and before you know it, it will become normal. It will become you. It just takes a little time, and stick with it for a little time, and even if it feels weird.
Is this more of a psychological process, or is there something transformative, something supernatural about the mitzvah that actually has this kind of power to actually influence?
I think it has nothing to do with the mitzvah.
Because it happens with an Avera as well.
It happens with an Avera, and it happens with Stam, anything. Let's say you want to get into an exercise routine. I mean, maybe exercise is a mitzvah. What? Yeah, just do it.
Is this consistent with Chavos Levos? I mean, that approach? Not that I know, but I mean, it sounds...
That what? Because he says to study Chavos Levos?
No, I'm just saying, Chavos Levos is, you have to have it in your heart. I mean,
well, this also says you have to have it in your heart. The question is just how do you get there? The key point is that a person, let's say a person is becoming a Baal Teshuvah, So he's never from his whole life. So the average Baal Teshuvah would come to you and he'd say, how do I become from? So a person may think, well, first learn Chovos HaLevavos, first learn the meaning behind everything, first understand everything, and then do it. To keep Shabbos or to start putting on tefillin without even knowing what you're doing, because you just became from a day ago. I mean, let's say a guy is not his fault; he doesn't know anything. So maybe an outside person would think, well, first learn it and then do it, because you want to understand what you're doing, you want to connect with what you're doing. What we're saying is, if you want to do it, if you want to understand it, just do it, and that will lead you to the Chovos HaLevavos. In other words, the lay will come from the actions. I don't think it's a contradiction. Anyways, let's go back to the Sefer Chinuch for a second. Hashem wanted to be Mezaka Klal Yisrael, wanted to give them schusim, wanted to purify them. Therefore, He gave them many Torah mitzvahs. Why so many? Why do we need to have so many things? Just a few mitzvahs is enough. All their thoughts, and all their actions should be a mitzvah to be good for us. Because we're constantly doing mitzvahs. We walk down the street and we pass by, we go into a store and there's not kosher food and we pass it up. We're getting better. We come to davening, we're getting better. We tie our shoes properly, we're getting better. We're constantly working on ourselves and becoming better and better. We'll keep getting better, we'll become better and better and better. And therefore he says you've got to be very careful in your actions. Many people, he says, are caught in this poisonous thought where they'll think, I'm such a good guy. It's okay if I do a little bit, it's not such a big deal. But the problem is when you do that little bit, you get pulled after that, and you don't realize it. You think you're okay, so it's okay if I do something a little bit off. But don't be so confident. If you want to be confident, keep your actions correct. As soon as you start to let your actions slip, don't be so confident in your leiv and your thoughts, because your leiv and your thoughts are going to be drawn after your actions. And that's why there's so many mitzvahs for Yetzias Mitzrayim, because Yetzias Mitzrayim is a foundation, is a fundamental part of being a Jew. There has to be so many mitzvahs to drive it in more, and drive it in more, and drive it in more. By doing all those actions, the heart will become stronger and stronger and more connected. And therefore, this is the idea that when a person wants to do Teshuvah, a person wants to change, the idea is just go ahead, just do it. Don't hold back because it feels weird. Don't hold back because you don't understand it, because it's not me, because it doesn't feel right. Just do it because you know it's right, and when you stick to it, it will become you. And that's true and applies by any kind of area that you want to improve, whether it's getting up in the morning, going to sleep at night, whatever it is, just do it and eventually it will become you. But you got to give it a little time, and you got to push through that beginning feeling of being fake. There's one other idea with this. There's one other idea that I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure if we'll take the whole rest of the time, but it's a very fundamental idea. I'll give it some extra time for this and see how it works out. But this is the idea that we talked about, is I feel fake. There's another idea that happens when a person wants to do Teshuvah. And the way it works is like this. A long time ago, my Rabbi once told me that a person wants to start learning Daf Yomi. So he sits down and decides he wants to learn Daf Yomi. He says, you know what the biggest Yetzer Hara? I'm talking about a yeshiva guy, let's say, who wants to learn Daf Yomi. He says, the biggest Yetzer Hara when a person wants to learn Daf Yomi is Teshuvah. That is the Yetzer Hara. Teshuvah on the page is the Yetzer Hara. Why is Teshuvah the Yetzer Hara? Because what happens is like this. A person makes a commitment. Let's take in our simple terms. So, let's say we make a commitment. We all say, you know what? I'm going to learn one Mishnah a day. A Mishnah takes, let's say, use a hard scroll, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I'm going to learn one Mishnah a day. I'm going to learn 2 halachas a day. 2 small halachas every day I'm going to learn, right? What does the Yetzer Hara tell you? You sit down, you learn your one Mishnah. It took 3 minutes. What does the Yetzer Hara tell you to do? One Mishnah. So little. How about let's make it 2? go much faster. Think about it. If we do 2 mishnahs, right, you start making all the calculations. 1 mishnah will take me 11 years to finish. If I do 2, it will take me 5.5 years to finish. So, you know what? I'm going to do 2 mishnahs. Then, you start doing 2 mishnahs. It takes you about 7 minutes. So what does the Yitzhar tell you? You know what? If I do 15 minutes, I could do a whole parak. If I do a whole parak, I could finish in almost 1 year. Do 8 mishnahs, finish in almost 1 year. A little more than a year. Right? And now we're up to 20 minutes. So do your mishnahs, you're up to 20 minutes, and about 4 or 5 days later, what happens? You don't have 20 minutes anymore that day, so you miss it. The next day you got to do 40 minutes. It's hard to catch up. And after about, let's say 11 days, 7, 8, 9 days, depends how committed you were in the beginning, you're finished. Now, had you started with that one Mishnah and stuck to it, had you started with that one Mishnah, which is almost nothing, 3 minutes, and stuck to it, every day, day after day after day, one Mishnah, just one little Mishnah, day after day after day, 11 years later, you wake up and you finish your Mishnah. Tefasta meruba loy tefasta. So when I went to my Rabbi and I said I was thinking about starting Daf Yomi, or any kind of learning Bekias, any kind of trying to learn fast, the trick of the Yetzer Hara when you're trying to learn fast is one of 2 options. Either he tries to tell you to do a little bit more, whatever your goal is a day, he tries to push you to do a little bit more, so it feels like more. So instead of Ahmed, do a blot, instead of a blot, do 2 blot, whatever it is. Or he tries to tell you, that's not real learning when you go so fast. You gotta learn Tosfos. That's not learning. If you just learn Gemara Rashi, you're missing things. You gotta learn Tosfos. And if you learn Tosfos, that's not real learning. You gotta see the Rajba and the Ritva and the Marsha and the Halacha. That's not real learning. And that's your Yetzer Hara talking to you. It sounds like the Yetzer type, right? It sounds like the Yetzer type. He's telling you, you gotta learn it more in depth and more in depth. But what happens is you make a goal to learn Daf Yomi. So one day you learn Daf Yomi, it takes you 40 minutes. The next day 40 minutes. The next day you say, you know what? Let's add Tosfos. It takes maybe an hour. And then before you know it again, you stop. You can't keep up because it takes too long. So he used to tell me, learn Bekias, don't look at Tosfos. That's your Yetzer Hara. Stay away from Tosfos. That's the Yetzer Hara. It's a difficult Yetzer Hara.
Before you know it, he's learning all day in Koilo.
Before you know it, he's not learning
He
all
has
day.
no parnasa. He's not
except that he
no time for work.
Except he doesn't keep it up. If he would keep it up, we could worry about the parnasa. We could figure out what to do about the parnasa. But so the idea is that what we have to do when we want to come time to make a change is we need to, and everybody knows this, we need to take small steps. We need to take small steps. We need to commit to something that's doable, and then we need to safeguard that commitment. And when we want to safeguard that commitment, we need to make sure that the commitment is doable, and we need to make sure that we don't do too much. And one of the most difficult parts of this process is keeping to the not doing too much, keeping to the small amounts. So maybe if a person wants to go on a diet, maybe he'll try to walk to shul 1 time a day instead of driving. Or maybe by supper he'll be careful what he eats, but the rest of the day he'll just be normal. Small steps. It's a lot easier to do a small step, but the problem with a small step, even if you could keep to it, is you start to feel like a hypocrite. And the reason why you start to feel like a hypocrite, it's a little different than feeling like a faker. And the reason why it's a little different than feeling like a faker is because, let's say a person has a problem, he talks during davening. So let's say he realizes that to try not to talk during davening, 7 days a week, all davening, is just too much. He's not going to stick to it. He's going to say he's going to stick to it, but he knows in his heart it's too big of a leap from here to there. So what does he decide to do? Okay, I'm not going to talk during davening by mincha. I'm still going to talk during davening. By mincha, I'm not going to talk during davening. Now what does the Yetzer Hara tell you? What are you, a hypocrite? Either you talk during davening or you don't talk during davening. What kind of business is that, right? Which one are you? Let's go. MS, right? The Yetzer Hara is very, very firm. He wants MS. He wants consistency. You can't talk during davening by shacharis and all of a sudden mincha. What's going to happen, because of the Yetzer Hara, if Jim comes over to you by shacharis and you talk to him, and then Jim comes over to you by mincha and you ignore him? He's not going to know what you're doing. Who are you? Are you the guy who talks, or you're not the guy who talks?
If I talk to you, wait.
At least he comes to shul, huh? Chachi comes to shul. It's not always true, by the way. It's a different discussion, but people do feel that way, but not always is it better if it comes to shul. It's a different discussion. Anyways, so what do we start to feel? We start to feel like hypocrites, because when you're doing small steps, what you're inherently saying is, I'm still going to continue to do things wrong. And you need to sort of accept that you're going to continue to do things wrong. And what happens is that when you try to work on something, your heart and your Yetzirah doesn't want to let you accept that I'm going to continue to talk during davening. So what he tries to push you to do is to make it all or nothing. And usually, if a person's really necessary not to talk during davening, what will happen is he'll do the Yetzirah of the Taisis, where he'll try to overextend himself. He'll try to never talk during davening, but that he won't be able to keep up. So what's the Eitzah? The Eitzah is to get used to being a hypocrite. And what that means is you need to get used to the idea that we are not perfect. You need to get used to the idea that you are not perfect, and that you are going to do things wrong at the same time as doing things right. And it's not right, but you just got to get used to it. You got to start to accept that we're not perfect. And our job in life is, maybe it is to become perfect, but there's a path to get to perfection. And while you're on the path, which is probably your whole life, you're going to have areas where you're going to have to accept that you're going to do the wrong thing. And if you don't have that, then it's going to try to bite off more than you can chew. And then you're just going to always do the wrong thing. Now obviously that doesn't mean we're trying to say, go do the wrong thing, but on a certain level it does. So you have a not from person. Let's take a person who's completely not from, or a person who knows in himself he has a problem. He is Mechal Shabbos. He's Mechal Shabbos. He shouldn't be Mechal Shabbos. He knows he shouldn't be Mechal Shabbos. He wants to change. So how would you advise him if you were his rabbi? So here I have an idea. Keep the entire Shabbos on the first Shabbos. Every single rule, keep on the first Shabbos.
Do the Friday night.
Start with Friday night. But what are you sort of telling him?
Do less wrong, you're telling him.
But what are you sort of telling him? But on Shabbos it's okay to drive. What do you mean? Am I keeping Shabbos? Am I not keeping Shabbos? And the answer to the question is, you're on the road to keeping Shabbos. You're on the path. You're on the path to keeping Shabbos. But the path to keeping Shabbos needs to allow yourself to keep doing Averis and to say it's okay.
You can say the other way around. Do less Averis.
Do less Averis. Let's start with Friday night.
9 is better than 10.
Right.
You're not saying do Averis, you're saying do less.
But accept that you're doing Averis. Accept that you're going to do some Averis.
It's better to do less.
And this really takes us back to the original discussion. We talked about the idea that Judaism is not all or nothing. And this is really the foundation of what we're talking about. Judaism is not, Yiddishkeit is not all or nothing. Every independent time that a person talks during davening, or says Lashon Hara, or learns, or davens, or makes a bracha, or benches, or whatever he does, every independent time is judged separately. And therefore, it's not a contradiction to say that even though normally I don't pay attention during davening, and I daven without any kavana, but for the first bracha of benching and the first bracha of Shemona Esrei, I'm going to have kavana. Again, comes along the Eitzah and he says, what, first bracha? Where the first bracha? How about the first 2 brachas? You know what? That was easy. Let's do the first 3 brachas. Hey, that worked. Let's go to the whole Shemona Esrei. And then what happens the next day? You're back to 0. Start with 1 bracha, but it feels weird. What do you mean 1 bracha? Do I have kavanah or do I not have kavanah? The answer is at least have kavanah for 1 bracha. At least stick to that. Do something that you could stick to, and just do that.
So this comes back to the question of whether it's better to go to shul and drive to go to shul rather than not go to shul at all on Shabbos?
Right, like someone said before, at least he's in shul. The answer is no, it's better not to go to shul. Depends on where he's up to. But usually, driving on Shabbos is worse. It really depends on the person. It depends on where he is on the path.
Is he going to drive to the mall or to the movies, or is it better he should drive to shul?
No. Better, not better. Not better he should drive. Better he shouldn't drive.
But you said take small steps.
Yeah, so if a person is on the path,
In the mall, he's going to get.
if the person is on the path, and every person is in a different place in life, and this is the way to be makar for the guy, and you're bringing him closer and closer, then so slowly he'll build. Slowly, we're trying to build towards him becoming firm.
The mall, there's no chance.
Right, but the question is, how long does that last for? Like, in other words, let's say he's not going anywhere. But okay, this is already individualized questions. But let's talk about ourselves. Let's talk about a simple example. A person wants to improve his davening. So the person will wake up in the morning and he'll say, I got to daven the whole davening with kavanah. And obviously we know that if you try to daven the whole daven with kavanah, and you go from 0 to 60, you're going to crash. You're not going to keep it up. I guarantee you right now that we'll look back at you in 1 month from now, and you won't even remember that you tried that daven with kavanah. That exercise will be so futile that you won't even remember that you did it. But if you make a commitment to learn one Mishnah, or to say one bracha with kavanah, and you stick to it, the first bracha of the day I'm going to say with kavanah. The first time I say Hashem's name, I'm going to focus on He's Adonai HaKol, He's the master of the world. And you can't do all of these, by the way. You can't do the first bracha of Shemona Esrei and the first bracha of benching, and the first time you got to pick a few small steps and stick to them and build on them. Once you've mastered them, eventually you will improve. But if you try to bite off more than you can chew, you're going to crash and burn. And in order to do this, you need to get used to the idea of being a hypocrite. You need to get used to the idea that sometimes I'm going to daven without kavanah, even though sometimes I do daven with kavanah. Or sometimes I'm going to say Lashon Hara, even though other times I'm not going to. And obviously it doesn't mean we're not advocating doing any of these things. But in order to improve, in order to get better, you need to accept the path.
Are you really a hypocrite?
Are you?
I'm asking you. You have to take medicine for 7 days. You're a hypocrite. You don't take it all at once. Are you a hypocrite because you started to fix yourself?
No, but if you have to...
I don't think you're a hypocrite.
No, you are a hypocrite. I'll give you a better example. Let's say it's very dangerous for you to eat sugar. So you usually eat a lot of sugar. So now you start to cut out sugar from your diet slowly. It starts to feel weird. I mean, look, I'm still eating sugar. What's the difference? But the idea is you eat 100 grams of sugar, let's cut it down to 99. Maybe in a week we cut it to 98, 97. Eventually we could get used to it. But am I a hypocrite? Sure, in some ways I'm a hypocrite. Because I just had an ice cream cone and now you're telling me I can't put a little sugar in my coffee. What in the world? It's like the guy who drinks the Diet Coke. It's like the guy who drinks the Diet Coke when he's at the restaurant eating a huge steak. What are you? You're eating mashed potatoes.
Different story.
You're eating mashed potatoes full of oil and a little sugar. You're eating a big fat steak covered in barbecue sauce. You're eating fried vegetables, and you're drinking a Diet Coke. What in the world are you? You're a hypocrite. The answer is, at least I'm doing something.
No, you're not. You know what? The Diet Coke is aspartame is always in sugar. So actually you're not. But anyway, that's a side focus, okay? The point is you're trying to fix yourself. You're going to knock somebody because you can't do whatever.
I'm not knocking anybody. I'm telling you what you yourself know. I'm not telling you what I think of that guy. I'm telling you what that guy, what the Yetzer Hara will come and tell the guy to start thinking of himself.
But you shouldn't listen to him.
You're right. Boom, we're on the same team. That's what I'm saying. The Yetzer Hara is wrong. Don't listen to him.
But he's very smart.
But he's very smart. He could get you, you're a faker, you're a hypocrite, this isn't you, what kind of business, who do you think you are, you think you're Mr. Tzaddik, you think you're not going to talk to him, you're such a bum, you remember what you did yesterday, you remember what you did yesterday, I remember what you did yesterday, now you're going to not talk to him, a guy who did da-da-da-da-da, he's not going to talk to him, you're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite. Yesterday you went and did da-da-da-da-da, and now you're not going to talk. Now, who are you? Are you the bum? Or what?
Not a member of the Bible.
No. Are you the bum or are you the guy who does this? The answer is, I'm both. And we got to get used to being both. We got to get used to having this irvuvia, this mixture, this confusion where sometimes we do things wrong and sometimes we do things right, and we got to accept that, and we need to try to improve. So we need to try to go like this: a little less wrong, a little more right, a little less wrong, a little more right. Not like this: I'm never doing anything wrong again, I'm only doing everything right. You're not going to get anywhere. You got to get used to sometimes doing things bad.
Rabbi, what I have here again is, what's the formula from moving from one bracha to two? How do you tell? I mean, if it's either Yetzer Hara or you're ready to move on to two brachas. So how do you? What's the formula?
Yetzer Hara, if the guy wants to learn another mission, another it's the Yetzer Hara.
It's going to mess him up.
No, it's all right. He's tricking you.
Pushing him to learn beyond.
He's tricking you because you're not going to keep it up. Well, okay, so you have to figure out how much you can keep up, but you got to realize that wherever that point is, Yetzer Hara is going to try to get you a little bit more. But wherever that point is, he's going to try to get you to do a little bit more.
The point that we make, it's a very good point, is there's a point where your Yetzer Tov says you're ready to learn the second mission.
Yeah, it's dangerous. You got to be very careful. If you stuck to something for a long time, you need to be very, very wary of adding to it. Because the Yetzer Hara doesn't only come on the first day and the second day and the third day, but the Yetzer Hara will pop up 6 months later. You didn't forget. And 6 months later, he'll say to you, look, you stuck to one Mishnah for 6 months.
But now, after 6 months, his Yetzer Hara Tov has gotten stronger.
You don't know which one it is.
He went to the gym and he's been working on it.
It's very difficult to know which one it is. It's very scary, and you got to be very, very wary. Yes, but you do have to be very wary, because it might be the Yetzer Tov, but it might also be the Yetzer Hara, and it's hard to know. And that goes back to a different discussion that we talked about, that the world is gray, and it's not always so easy to know, and sometimes you have to ask, and sometimes you have to test. But you have to be very, very careful not to lose the milah that you attained. Because if you try to build it up too much, you are at risk of losing the milah that you attained.
So you should err on the side of caution.
I didn't say you should err on the side of caution. Maybe you should have a rabbi you talk to. Maybe you should think about it. Maybe you should test it.
But it sounds very negative.
But just whatever you do, be careful not to lose that one Mishnah.
The Yerush is so big here, and it's so negative. You should have to make it more positive.
It is positive. The positive it is. Do it. It's okay. It's okay to do things wrong. Get used to the fact that you're going to do things wrong. Get used to it. It's, you learn Daf Yomi every day?
I try my best.
Okay. What do you think would happen if we say do two? Is that the Yetzer Tov or the Yetzer Hara?
Everything what you said is true. I mean,
how do you know?
It's good to want to learn a Tosfos. So take another 20 minutes at the end of the day, whatever, and sit and learn a Tosfos. It's all positive.
It is positive, but if you do more, you're at risk. Yeah, but if you do more, you're at risk of losing your mile that you attain.
Could be a trick.
He does trick you. Guaranteed, the Yetzer Hara is going to trick you. Now, maybe at some point the Yetzer Tov is also going to wake up and do it, and you got to know which one it is. You got to be careful.
Isn't there the element of looking at see what the cumulative effect is? That is to say, to be able to say to yourself, I'm only learning one Mishnah, but at the end of the year, it's 300 Mishnah in my pocket.
Right, but do I ever get to boom it up to two? That's what he's asking. At some point, can I take the risk of building it up to two? I mean, it will be faster, and I think I could do it. I've been doing this for a long time. I stuck to it. I think I'm ready for the next step.
Well, one is one more than nothing.
Yeah, so it should be. Eventually, you could build up to two, and eventually, maybe you could build up to three. And you test it, but you got to be careful, and you got to make sure you don't. There is going to be a point where you overextend yourself, whether that point is at 600 a day, or it's at 4 a day, but you agree that there's going to be a point where you did overextend yourself. So maybe you can learn 5 minutes, maybe you can learn 10 minutes, maybe you can learn 15, 20. I mean, the goal is that you build up. The goal is not that you stay at your level for the rest of your life, but the goal is that you build up in a way where you don't lose the earlier milah that you attained, that there's a constant growth where you keep to the levels that you attained. But you need to get used to the idea when someone is driving on Shabbos, but keeping Friday night, or maybe you'll go over to someone and you'll say, you know what, you want to start keeping kosher? Light candles. Make kiddush. I am going to turn on the TV 5 minutes later. What kind of ridiculous is that? It's ridiculous. Well, it's ridiculous. I'm going to light candles, I'm going to turn on the TV. It makes no sense.
You know, you're judging people by...
No, I'm not judging anybody by me. I'm judging them by how they're going to say to themselves.
You know, life is made up of a bunch of baby steps.
And that's what you have to tell yourself. But what the Yetzer Hara tells you, I'm telling you, this is a message that the Yetzer Hara comes to you in your brain and says to you. If it doesn't happen to you, great. Awesome. But it happens to many people. And what he does is, one of his methods is to come to you and say, why just light candles? Why not? Don't watch TV. Don't drive. Don't sew. Don't do anything. And then what happens is that the person bites off more than they can chew too fast, too quick, and they get nowhere.
But that's true about anything. It's
Right.
like all these people go
Exactly.
no offense to Dr. Poon, whoever he may be, all these people lose 5 million pounds.
Right, exactly.
And then they gain 6 million back.
100%. And that's why you got to get used to hypocrisy. You got to get used to the idea that, yeah, I'm going to be careful by dinner. By dinner, I'm going to try to be careful. The rest of the day, I'm not. I'll do everything else the same, but by dinner, I'll be careful. Now, it's not fast, it's not quick, it's not big, it's small. Now, you know what? By dinner for 6 months, I was careful. Now I'm going to add in lunch. Eventually, I'll drink the diet soda, even though I'm having the steak and the mashed potatoes, right? Maybe I'll cut out the potatoes eventually, right? And slowly but surely, you build it up, and you grow. You got to get used to being a hypocrite. And you need to accept that there's an or and a choshech. There's a light and a darkness working at the same time. And we can be a contradiction. We can do something terribly wrong and still come and keep everything else. And we got to get used to that, because what the Yetzer Hara tries to do, this is the biggest trick of the Yetzer Hara. He tries to get you to do an Avera, he tries to get you to do one thing wrong, and then he tells you, you are a bum for doing that Avera, and now that you're a bum, what right do you have to go to shul? A chutzpah, you're going to sit and learn? You're the guy who just did da-da-da-da-da, you're going to sit and learn? You're going to daven? You're going to whatever? You're the bum. Who are you? And then it gets you to stop doing everything else. So what you got to do is tell the Yetzer Hara, I don't care if I'm a bum. Maybe I am in some areas. Maybe I do slip up and fall in some areas. But I got to work on those. But it doesn't mean I should give up everything else. It's not all or nothing. I need to do as much as I can do. Even if I do slip up over here, even if I do say Lashon Hara, even if I do something wrong, I still need to do as much as I can right. And to keep trying to grow and to keep trying to fix those things, because everybody is a hypocrite on some level. Everybody has some level where they're not consistent with another area in their life. And you need to try to be as good as you can in the areas that you are good, and try to grow in the other areas, but to accept the fact that even though I did something wrong, I'm still going to try to do everything else right. Shkoyach.